your emotions are just tied to whatever metrics that you are trying to pull. Like there's a chart, and my like mental state just correlates 100% exactly to that.
It's like the Dunning-Kruger chart.
No. I meant like just a chart of our like downloads. Like that's the thing that we focus on.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
You literally meant like a metric chart.
No. Like just literally that's like a chart of my emotions. Like if you want to know how I'm doing, just go check our NPM downloads. How's it going?
What's up? You went right into the recording. I was about to say how much I missed you, how it's good to finally get to talk to you, and you're like, shut up. Shut the hell up. Pause. Let me give me everything. I'm going to record. I'm like, okay.
Well, here's the thing. We used to like do like an intro and then start recording, but then some of the best stuff was always just in the warm-up. So now I just record right away. Like I don't give a shit.
Nice.
So how you doing? How have things been?
Dude, things have been pretty rough. I'm not even gonna lie.
Really? Like, tell me more.
Yeah, I know it's good to you get people like, oh, look, this everything's so great. But man, like I've been in it right now. It's definitely been difficult for me.
Yeah. What's going on?
I got COVID. I have COVID right now.
Really?
So that's been tough. Yeah. Bad cough. It's hard to like talk for a long time because I have to take a deep breath. And my cardio is pretty good. Like I don't smoke, don't do anything like that, train a lot. So it's hard. It's like weird when I'm like out of breath. So yeah, that's been pretty, rough. Work has been like extremely like my team is shifting to really make me like a senior and like the point of contact tech lead. And that's just been a lot of responsibility, like a significant step. It's been like typically, ideally want to be like gradual, like hand off here and there while you have like a real senior or like the former tech lead to kind of still look over stuff. But they've like really flipped the switch where it's like now no one's going to look over your stuff. You are responsible. And that's been a hard transition. And then obviously with like content and side projects, when that's not in, the best spot, obviously that eats at you a little bit more. So
damn, dude, that's a lot. I didn't even know people were still getting COVID. Is that still a thing?
Dude, I had COVID once and it lasted like 3 days. Yeah. And it wasn't bad. Like I didn't even think I had COVID, but I just came down with like a cold. I took a COVID test because those were like, you can get them easily. And I popped for positive. I'm like, okay, 3 days, I'm good. This time it's been lasting for over a week and it's been terrible. It's been bad, man. Like I was bedridden once for a couple of hours. But yeah, like it's like some days I feel great. Like this morning I feel phenomenal. Sometimes I cough. And then sometimes randomly in the evening, I just get hit with a wave of like achiness, weakness. That I'm just like, I can't do anything.
Dude, I hate that too, because then it just, because you're saying you train a lot, like it just messes up your routine too. Then when you go back, you're like off and you gotta like work back up again. Just a bummer.
And the other factors, even when I feel great, I don't want to put everyone else at risk of COVID, right? Yeah. So I'm not going, like, even though I think I can train right now, like at this moment, I'm not going to because I can still probably spread COVID. So I have to be locked down. And that's like no training, no weightlifting, no sauna. And like that is just killer. Just so bad.
Yeah. I always realize like how brittle my life is because I'll think I'm in like a really good routine. Like I wake up at a certain time. I have my responsibilities. I do them. I get a lot of work done. I go to the gym. I do it all. And then one little thing will change. Like I'll get sick. Or right now, like Liz has been gone. So she just went to visit her friend in DC. It's only been 2 days, and literally this morning I fucking flooded my kitchen. Like just everything is going wrong. Just one little change, and I'm just like off my routine. I slept at like 3 a.m. yesterday. I like slept 4 hours yesterday. Yeah, like those little things just knock you entirely out of a good pattern.
Dude, routine is so key. Like so key, especially for like certain types of people. Like I feel like ThePrimeagen, he's very routine based, right? Yeah. Like extremely. Like his time is like allocated to like the smallest second, right? And I'm not to that extreme, but like I need my routine. Like I need to like, wake up at this time, walk honeydew, and then, do all my stuff. And like whatever throws me off that, I'm just like not in it. And it like snowballs, because then you don't do one thing in time and then it bleeds over to the next item and you're like, this sucks.
Yeah. It's funny because when I was younger, I had no routine at all. And I was like, oh, I'm really productive. Like look how much work I'm getting done. Look how many hours I'm putting into it. something happened and I kind of switched to be like, okay, let me like actually like try to wake up consistently. Let me go to bed consistently. Let me like have like slotted time for different things. And I was like, damn, holy shit. Like I'm getting the same amount of work done in like half the time. Cause when you just have a consistent day every day, it just adds up every single time. So it's hard to know that, because when you're not doing it, it feels like, yeah, this is fine. But when you actually have that habit of having a routine, you realize huge difference.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, that's been like my update a little bit, quick one. I've been asking you for a ton of CDK help on the side there, behind the scenes, getting real deep into CDK more so than ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, how's life with you, man?
Yeah, it's funny you were saying when people ask how are things, everyone's always like, it's great. I always think about this with founders. Like whenever you ask a founder, like, oh, how's it going with your company? They're like, it's going great, man. Like we're signing deals, like, whatever. And I know fucking it's not going great. I know you might feel good one day and the next day you feel like everything's a disaster. But every founder is like, we're doing really well. And then like a week later, their company shuts down.
Oh my God.
But yeah, I've been in like a period of just intense work, I think, it's been lasting a while, and it's probably going to continue to last till the end of this year. Like basically with SST, we shifted into a phase of like, okay, let's get to a break-even point where we're making enough money to cover how much we're spending.
Okay.
And that's like a key phase of the business, because that's like the shift from being like, oh yeah, we're just like a startup fucking around to see if we can do something, to then knowing, oh yeah, like we can work on this for the next 10 years if we want to. So like I'm like really eager to get to that milestone. We have like, I would say like 12 months or so to figure it out, and we'll see. Like it's not clear. Like I feel like there's a 50-50 shot we'll do it or we won't. There's like a million fallback things that we can go to. But yeah, right now it's like we're so focused on the metrics and the numbers, and it's like very clear. But that's just for me. When I'm in this mode, I just like can't enjoy other things. I'm like, this is just what my life is about right now. I'm like not really I'm gonna kind of deprioritize some of the other stuff, even like just the fun stuff, because I feel like if I don't have certain things figured out, I just like can't enjoy like much else. But I also can't stay in this mode for that long. So we'll see.
Dude, I have two things I want to talk about. And each of them can go into separate paths. One of the topics is like startups and what you said about how we make money, especially a company like SST, which I want to get into after. But my first like question or like thing I want to bring up is I saw a recent podcast. I was just scrolling through like social media, so I don't even know what podcast this is, right? Some people didn't know. And this guy was like, a person's always struggling between three things. And one of them is supplying for your family in terms of like, you want to make sure that your family's taken care of, you're making enough money, they have a house, or they're, all that stuff, right? The essentials. The second one is being the best version of yourself for your family. So that's what like you self-improve, where you go to the gym, you're reading, you're building, all that stuff, right? And the third one that everyone's always torn between these three is actually spending quality time with your family that you're doing all these things for. And it's so hard to find that balance. And like, I don't know how that's even done at this point. And like, I have a really small, like my direct family is obviously like my partner and my dog, right? But it's like, I'm trying to be the best for them. I'm trying to give them like everything they want. So like money is never an issue or whatever. But then it's like to really like excel those two fields, you're gonna have to take away from like spending quality time with them.
Yeah.
But then at the end of the day, the thing that really matters, if we strip away everything and like we're super old, 80-year-olds, right? We're gonna be like wishing we spent more quality time with these folks, right? So that's something that's so hard. Like I'm so torn between those, and trying to find the balance is like radical.
Yeah, it's really hard. And I think for me it's a little bit different, because there's a little bit more harmony between those three things for me, because me and my wife work together on like our business together, so we really enjoy doing that together. When we're out, when we're taking walks, that's kind of, we can talk about that. It counts as both quality time and work. There's a little bit of harmony there, but yeah, I think overall there's just, for me, the conflict is really like maximizing my income today, which would mean I would have like a really great like work-life balance. Like I wouldn't be working too much. I'd be making a good amount of money. We'd be able to like move our family forward with the things that we want to do. So that would kind of be like, that's like always there. It's like a temptation. but there's like a ceiling to that. Like I know in terms of what like me and Liz want for our future, if I just did that and that's all I did today, like we don't really get the life that we want one day. So there is this trade-off of like, yeah, we need to kind of try to set ourselves up for the next 10, 20 years of our life. But it's painful now. And then simultaneously, you can't just wait forever. Like nothing's guaranteed. So if we like, you know, we want to have kids soon, we can't just wait for like our businesses to be in order, which might take 10 years before we have kids.
Exactly.
So you just kind of have to like do everything at the same time. And it's not really ideal. Yeah, man, it's really hard.
Yeah, it is. It really is, man. So that's why, like, I think the older I got, and the more I've been into like the content space and like really looking up to people, like Primeagen, I think is like one of the best examples, and Trash as well, actually, because and Teach too. Like, there's so many people I'm gonna miss, right? So I don't want to like list every single person, but like these individuals have like, you know, families, they have full-time jobs, and you know, especially Prime, like his content output is at the same caliber, if not more, than a person doing this full time.
Yeah.
He's streaming multiple times a day. He's uploading multiple times to his second YouTube channel while working on like a more polished one on his main channel and doing extra stuff, which would be like front end masters and all that stuff. And it's just mind blowing that he's able to fit everything in his day and balance it. And it's like really admirable.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I look up to Prime the most. Like people always say, like when they come up to me and talk to Prime, right? Because I think Prime is so massive that he can't dedicate like one-to-one time. But a channel like me, you come in, you pop in, you ask a question, I can actually dedicate more questions for you, right? And they're like, oh, like Prime is such a good developer, he's such a good programmer. And like to me, I don't think of Prime as like this excellent programmer developer. He's good, he's really knowledgeable. But to me, what makes Prime stand out and what people should be asking is like, how is he so good at managing his time?
Yeah, exactly. That's key. And I think like for me, it's always been about building leverage. So if I spend an hour today versus an hour I spent 10 years ago, like what is the output? And I've always tried to choose things that would kind of build my leverage in that way. And oftentimes it's not the thing that seems like it makes sense in the short term, right? In the short term, you like try to be like, okay, where can I make the most money, or like what's the best job that I can get? But oftentimes the things that build leverage are things that like don't seem to make sense in the moment, but they kind of compound over time. Yeah. So I think, I mean, the older you get, like you don't want to have this like very linear career or life where you're just kind of linearly improving what you can do. You want to, you know, like 10 years from now, you should be outputting like 100x, like what you could do before, you know, exaggeration, but like, it's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So then the second thing, the more like, I think less philosophical, more like actual business implemented question I had. So obviously, you know, when Bun came out, I was, that was the, you know, huge like ripple in the tech sphere. Everyone was talking about Bun. I actually got approached by investors and they're like, hey, can we like ask some question about Bun? And I'm like, look, what the hell? Why? And it's because I made a tweet about Bun that went like pseudo viral. Like it had like 2,000 likes.
Yeah.
And there's a picture of TJ. And, you know, these investors are like, yeah, we want to talk to you about Bun. And I'm like, are you sure? Like, I'm not the right person to be talking about Bun. And they're like, yeah, like, let's talk. I'm like, okay. So we hop on this call. I thought the call was going to be like, oh, like, what do you think of Bun? You know, do you think it's a good tool, et cetera, which the questions were that. But then the questions spun where it's like, how do you think Bun can make money? How can Bun? And I'm just like, what the? Like, I can't answer this. Are you kidding me? I have no idea how Bun can make money. I have no clue. And they're like, do you think they should compete against Vercel? And I'm like, this is not. I'm not your guy. Like, I'm not the guy to be asking these questions at all. But the reason why I wanted to bring this up is like an interesting point because, you know, investors in Bun, the only reason why they want to invest majority of the time is because they want to make their money back, right? Any investment, you want to see your money come back X-fold, right? So like in a company like SST or any open source company, like how do you make money? How does a company like SST, where, you know, I could spin up SST and use it for free, and you guys will never even know about it, only because of like some metrics maybe that like a download, but there's no subscription model, there's no how do you guys make money with SST or any tool like that? Yeah,
I mean, I love this topic because I just love thinking about like business models in general. Every project is very different, and it ranges from you can follow a very established business model that has like a ton of history, or other things need to like be really creative and be really inventive. And there's like so much synergy with like the tech you're working on, like needs to line up with that. So for SST, I think we are, I would say, in the simpler range of things. So we have like the standard, do as much for free as possible. Then for the people that are in production, there's like add-on services that aren't strictly necessary, and there might even be other alternatives too that we charge for. So right now, that's kind of saying like we're trying to think about like actually trying to make more money. So a lot of stuff that we've been working on the last couple of months has been in that category. So yeah, you can use SST for free. You can deploy your application for free. But once you deploy, there's like a lot of things that you need to do in production, an infinite number of things actually. And you can actually think about every single dev tool in the space as an option of something we can build. So one thing is like basic things like logs. How do I go see what's happening? Issues. How do we get alerted when there's an exception? So typically people might do something like, okay, I'm going to go sign up for Datadog, set that up, set my logs in there. I'm going to go sign up for Sentry, set up the integration, get alerted in Sentry. And you can still do that, and that's fine, and you'll get like a very good experience because those companies are very focused on those things. But for us, we basically took both of those things and said, whenever you deploy an app, this is like already set up for you. Like both of these things, you have a logs experience, you have an issues experience. There's a free tier. If you don't want it, fine, go use your own thing. For some people, they like the fact that, again, it's all integrated and like you don't have to set anything up. And every time you deploy, all of your functions are monitored. There's like no accidental case of you forgetting to do something or setting something up right. Source maps, all that stuff is handled for you. So that's our approach, where we like, because it has to reflect your team, right? The three of us, we like building really good products, like really good web applications. Like we're very motivated to build those experiences. So that's how we want to make money. We want to make money because you pay us for a really good product we built that is complementary to the core thing. And the reason that this works is because there's a lot of benefit in being the default. If SST is big, our tooling is the default tooling to use with it. There's going to be some percentage of people that don't use it. That's fine. But there's like a really nice channel there. And in general, when you're trying to build a business, especially a venture scale business, you want to find something that you can become the default for. Most companies cannot pull this off, like even us. Like it's very hard to become the default for anything. In our case, we're trying to like be the default for AWS on the SST side, and then our tooling's like the default for once you're in production. So yeah, but like it varies business to business. Like Bun is very different. I have a bunch of thoughts on Bun too, but does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that was like that model, like if I break it down, is like a very like generic model. Like you get enjoy everything for free. Everything's great. You know, like hobby projects, we got you. Enjoy the project, and then you benefit because it's word of mouth, essentially. Or like if you give a pleasant experience, people are gonna be like, this is awesome. Right. And you can introduce that seamlessly with a free tier right off the bat. Right. And the more generous the free tier, the better that experience is typically. But then it's like, you know, like you said, you're competing essentially with like what I would classify as a group of companies that are like the uncompetable, which is like AWS. Right. Like AWS CDK. And, you know, you and I have this like I use CDK. Right. And the reason why I use CDK is because I've been exposed to it at work. I'm more familiar with it. And so I use CDK, right? Even when I make my side projects right now, I'm like using CDK and et cetera, et cetera. And CDK or AWS has like a free tier. It's not the most generous. It's very limited, but whatever. So when it comes to like the distinguishing factor of how SST can make money, another question I have is like, okay, so for the hobbyist, the individual, the person who's getting into it, you use free tier, you're good. But then you have like, you know, if it were going like black, like 0-1, the other categories, like the people that are gonna need that extra little oomph, the more production experience, that's where we make money. But then like my kind of, I guess, question to that is like, if a company is big enough, like an enterprise level company is big enough, why would they trust SST over like AWS, right? And then the follow-up question is there maybe a middle ground between the hobbyist and the enterprise level for companies that aren't as big as like an established enterprise that use AWS right now, that SST actually aims for, like a niche in the middle group of people, a group of companies?
Yeah, so that is a really good question, and I don't even know if I have an answer to it, but I can like tell you about some of the situations. We weirdly have a crazy amount of like giant enterprise companies. Like we have companies like BMW, Tesla, Samsung, Disney, So the question is like, why do they bother to use SST instead of CDK directly? That's kind of where the opportunity is, even though there is, like you said, it's hard to compete. I was saying earlier, they're being the default, right? If you're going to use AWS, CDK is a default. It's hard to compete with that in theory. But if the default is bad enough, you can actually compete with it. And in this case, CDK has a weird constraint in that they need to support every possible architecture in every possible language. Our bet is that if you look at AWS and you're building something new, and you're gonna do it like the correct AWS specific way, that shrinks to like 5% of AWS. Like you're not thinking about EC2s, you're not thinking about like all these other services. So if we just focus on that smaller zone, can we build? It can't be like a 20% better experience. It has to be like a 10x better experience. And there was a gap, like just for like that zone of like serverless, what we focus on. There is a big enough gap where people see the benefit of using something that's not the default, which CDK is. And to be honest, CDK itself is that like it is the default in some way of looking at it, but like things like Terraform are still massively big. So it's not a space that has been won. Like if you're going to use AWS, you're going to do it this way. The thing we're really competing against is not really CDK. It's more that we're competing against Amplify. Because Amplify is that it's like, okay, let's scope into like what 95% of companies need and build a nice framework and experience around that. And Amplify is just like really bad. It's just not a good tool. So that has been like, that angle has been a lot easier for us. We do get that question. We used to get it a lot more earlier on, like where people would say like, well, why would I use this instead of just using CDK directly? Because early on the differences weren't massive, but now there's just like huge gaps in capability and ease. So yeah, if the gap is there, it's possible. I
think SST, the way you guys built SST really exposed like the shortcomings of CDK that I think people were just like numb to. They're like, oh, well, this is just CDK. You know, that was kind of what people were saying. But then like SST is like, you know, you can do the exact same thing, but we can make your life a little bit easier. And I think a lot of developers didn't know that path of least resistance until you guys built it.
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge thing you guys got going for you.
Yeah, and the other side of it is there's also something like really basic going on here, which is if you use CDK and you're using it on a bigger code base with a bunch of people, you start to build your own abstractions for certain things for like the area of AWS you're focusing on. Those abstractions end up being shitty because they're really narrow. They're like, you're not really testing them against a lot of different situations. So when stuff changes, like your abstractions are brittle. Our main advantage is we're doing the same thing. We're trying to build an abstraction over some of the infrastructure, but we get to test it against like thousands of companies that are using SST. So we know when we pick a design, when we make a design choice, we know that it's going to work for most people. So we just have a leg up on building the abstraction that you would have tried to build yourself.
Yeah. A potential, like this might be getting too much into the business of SST. So you can like just not answer this question.
We're pretty transparent with everything. So yeah.
Would another path of making that win being bought by AWS?
Yeah, so people ask us this all the time, and it definitely is a possibility, but the reality is that let's say they made us an offer today, we'd say no, because we'd have a better offer a year from now. Make us an offer a year from now.
Is that guaranteed? Like, so that okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but is that guaranteed?
No, because you don't have level of confidence, and we're like we're like, if we think about the vision of what we want to do, it's only 3 of us. We just need to fund ourselves for 2 to 3 years, and we can probably realize the vision of what we want. It's like, well, where we are to where we want to be, that gap is massive. So if they approach us today, like we would say no, because we want to wait till we've like at least attempted it. The reason it doesn't really make sense is if you drop the 3 of us inside AWS, we would get nothing done. We would maybe build a product even worse than the type of products AWS builds. It's just a reality of being dropped into a certain environment. Like the reason we can do certain things is because we operate in a very specific way. We found each other. We click. If you introduce like even the smallest variables into that, like it probably is not going to make sense. But people do ask us all the time, like, would AWS acquire you guys? It would make sense from their point of view. It just, I don't know. I just don't see it making sense for us.
I remember you and I talked about this, about the whole chemistry and dynamic thing between you 3.
Yeah.
It's like, I remember you and I were talking about, like, I was like, oh, like if you ever need like asking, like, would you guys ever expand your team or whatever? And it's like, you treated that very carefully because it's like, you really showcase like the sensitivity between the synergy between the three of you guys, right? It's like, and I agree, if you guys bring in a fourth person or another person or X amount of people, that could throw off the entire jive of what you guys have built so far. I don't know. You probably want to handle that like plutonium, like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, the three of us have been doing, it's funny because like the three of us have always like pretty much like been founders, like been at early stage places, whatever. And so we're doing this company with a bunch of experience. But if you look at us on paper, we look way less like a real company than anything else we've done before. And I think it's like this paradox of like, as you get more experience, you're just like, you just shed all this other stuff that doesn't matter or like is actually negative. So like the previous companies I founded, like we had way more people working there by now. But yeah, it's exactly what you said. Like the lesson I learned was literally one person that's like slightly off, permanent damage. Even if you like remove them, it's like done. Like it's you like can't undo like culture things like that.
Yeah.
And that's really the only thing we have going for us right now.
Remember, so there was a tweet between us where I said like, oh, before Twitch, I worked at a startup that got acquired.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are like, that's bullshit. Like I don't believe you, which is like totally understandable. But like that acquisition was, the company that acquired the startup was like a Fortune 500, and they were super old, like extremely old, and they moved so slow. And the second that acquisition went through, the majority of people left, like more than 80, like a significant number. The CTO left, I left, everybody left because it's like we knew without even experiencing the culture that that's not for us.
Yeah,
and we would not enjoy ourselves working for this new environment.
Yeah. I mean, it's exactly what, I mean, the acquisitions are really hard, like especially when you're trying to merge two different companies together and have it continue operating. Yeah, it's like you probably will lose the best people. Like that's why, like I don't understand acquisitions well yet, like because I haven't done them. But most of the ones I see, I'm just like, I don't fully get this because this is just the value here is gonna evaporate over X amount of years.
Yeah. Another interesting point is like I was interviewed for a company, like a startup that just passed like raising some capital. And they wanted to hire me as their founding engineer. So I went through the interview process, like 2 loops. I built them like a few systems, and they were like super impressed. They were just like, wow. And they gave me an offer, and the offer was really good, especially for a startup. Like I was kind of floored by the offer. I was like, this is like, and like I'm talking base salary was like very high, and everything looked good. And like I was actually like strongly considering, because these people really wanted me. Like that sense of like knowing that they see your value and they appreciate it, not only in terms of financial, but like we trust you to build this company, is so awesome. But I had to be very, very practical. And I knew just from my experience talking to the founders that we would not jive. And it was because of how close I'd be working with them and what I was understanding from them, the way I like really looked deeper into the way they operated. Great people, but to work with at that tight coupling would have been very, very bad. Especially for me. Like for me, I'm like, obviously from a content creating, like I'm fairly social, all that. But when it comes to like my programming life and content life is so drastically different. The only person who truly knows like my capability of programming is like Theo. Cause he is seeing like when I like really put on the headphones, like dive in, like I'm like, I don't talk on Slack. I don't message. I'm not, when it comes to programming at work, I'm like a ghost.
Yeah.
Like all I do is like grunt code work, and like that's all I do. I don't join any of the happy hours. None of that. But this company was a little bit opposite. So I knew like they really valued that like charisma factor that I guess I brought in terms of social and like content. But in terms of programming, it was like what I was being hired to do, it was not going to be right for me. I wasn't going to excel at the field that I can kind of do behind the scenes.
Yeah, no, that's really wise. I think I have definitely seen opportunities like that and have taken them, even though I knew that something was off. Like, in your gut that we were going to click or not. And when it's that early, I mean, to be honest, like if you're joining a company that early, like you should expect to become really good friends with the people that you're working with, because it's going to be a couple of people and you're spending hours and hours together every day. And if you can't see that happening, like I don't see myself really driving with these people. it just isn't going to work. It's just going to be kind of awkward the whole time, and eventually it's going to end. It's going to be like, full of friction. So yeah, that it's just like dating. It's like that chemistry needs to be there.
Exactly. And it's like at a bigger company like Twitch or Amazon or wherever, there's a bigger like margin of error that you can take, essentially. Like let's say you don't really jive with like the senior engineer on your team of, let's say, like 8 people, like, yeah, that's not great, but idealistically, like, you can manage because there's so many other teams. There's the manager, there's your teammates that, like, you can make it through a very healthy and good mental state career and position, even if you don't get along with 1 or 2 people on a team. But when it comes to a startup where you guys will be pinging each other on your phones, like calling each other, like talking 24/7, like that is where you have to be very, very diligent and be like, are you sure this is the people you're essentially going to like date?
Yeah.
Like you said, you're going to be in a relationship with them, and the relationship is like, creating something that's going to make money and deal with clients, and shit's going to break at 2 a.m. You better wake up and deal with it at 2 a.m.
Yeah. And like all kinds of emotional highs and lows and all of that.
I can't deal with that, man. The emotional stuff, I'm so bad. My feedback every year, like, I'm such an asshole when it comes to like interns or juniors.
Yeah.
Like when they come on the team, like I'm like always the mentor, because like I always have like a good idea of like how to introduce people to our infrastructure and code and all that. But when they come like oh, like it's too tough, or like, oh man, like this is like, I don't know how I feel, like I turn off and I'm just like, yo, I don't care about that right now. And it's gonna make me sound so bad, but like I said, like there's such a clear like if someone comes up to me on my Discord and they tell me about a bad day, I'll drop everything and I'll talk to them, like I'm yours. But when it comes to like programming, doing work, and like coding, literally, I'm just such a different person.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm the exact same way. Like it's I find it fun. I don't know. To me, like, I think it all comes from like 'cause I played a good amount of sports.
Same.
Yeah. So like, to me, it just is the same thing. Like, you're on a team, you're trying to accomplish something. Like, you got to push, you got to try. Like, the energy around sports is like, it's pretty like, it's like that. It's like shut the fuck up, stop complaining, let's get this done.
Yeah.
So I bring that like same kind of mentality to work. It's not for everyone. I know, like, again, like everyone doesn't. Some people have like a negative reaction to that. For me, I find it motivating, and I find that I build like really strong relationships when everyone is like in that zone. So yeah. So it clicks for me. Yeah.
100%. So before, when I wasn't a tech lead of a team, our attitude was a little bit like, so like, we're very like friendly, all that. Now that I'm a tech lead, like I've like set very distinguishing lines where it's like, I don't want like junior L4s on our team right now. Like the state of our team, as much as it'd be a great experience for L4 to join, like I do not think that is the best interest of the squad. And like I had to kind of pitch that, and it actually was approved. They're like, yeah, you know what? Like we'll agree. Like we'll only hire L5s. And the L5s that we hire are the same people like me. Like I don't know like what they do on the weekend. Like we have like brief conversations, but it's not like that. It's like these people, like I would trust with code anytime, like it's that kind of relationship. But when it comes to like, what they do or like what their dogs are like doing at the dog park, like I don't care,
Yeah. Again, like at a big company like that, it's pretty different because the fate of the company isn't resting on you having a good relationship, like the perfect relationship with these people. Whereas, at a small company, it's like if you are not like in love with your co-founders, like the company's not going to succeed. That's just kind of
100%
a reality of that. So and that's why so many people say like they like make or break relationships. Like it's a very common thing. Like friends that go into founding companies together, they end up not being friends anymore. And the reverse also, but like it's a very intense relationship.
Yeah, 2 of my really good friends, they made a startup, and they've been doing it for like 3 years. But now like they come to they pour like over $100,000 into it. I thought it was a really clever idea. It's still a very clever idea, but it just doesn't it's just too tough of an industry to break in. And like they've built it all right, they've improved it, and like now they're realizing. And like these are 2 of my like homies, like good friends, right?
Yeah.
And they got into this, and like there were so many times where their friendship was like dangling by a thread because of like the stress of their startup and putting in all that money into it.
Yeah.
And now they're like, you know what? Like we've been doing this for 3 years. We've moved on from a few different things, and like the love for the product is not there yet, but the love they have for each other is still there yet.
Yeah.
So they're like, you know what? We're still gonna be best friends. They are still, thank God. But the company, they're like ramping it down. They're like looking at either just completely like, destroying it or trying to sell it for some sort of recuperation.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely there. Like I have a business with my wife. I'm not going to pretend like we don't start work fights that spill over into like marriage fights, that it just like kind of gets everywhere. I think to a lot of people, that's like, that sounds like, they're like, that is terrible. Like, why would you ever do that? Like, I'm not going to pretend like it's great, but it's also fine. Like it happens every once in a while, but it's not a big deal. And it's only, I think long term, it's been strengthening for us, but yeah, it's not always like that.
It's not for everyone. I can like for sure. Like I what you and Liz have is like very unique, and I'm sure like a lot of couples would just like falter like right off the bat if they were put in that same position.
Yeah, we met through work, so that like it wasn't like, oh, we're gonna work together and we have no idea what to expect. Like she knew how I get with work, like I described earlier, and I knew all of her things as well. So it's not like they bother us less, but at least we knew going in.
Yeah, that's good.
We do run into a lot of husband-wife companies. Like we see, there's a lot of companies that are founded by husband-wife teams. Yeah, so it's like actually not that uncommon. And if you really think about it, if you zoom out, like historically, a lot of people had their own businesses, like you run your farm or like you run your little like whatever small business your family operates, and those are all technically husband-wife founded companies. Like Liz's parents have a construction business; it's a husband-wife thing. So it is hard, but it also has like a lot of precedent.
Yeah, it's weird, man. It's weird. I'm thinking of like what my next step is going to be in life. And that's why I started off wanting to ask you for like questions like your business models, like how you, Jay, Frank work, all those, like, because I'm thinking like the next step for me is probably going to be the most significant one. As much as I love the comfortability and like the paychecks I get from Amazon, which is nice. Like I don't want to like, it's very nice, right? Like if I just wanted to invest, I wouldn't even think about my current thoughts. But like the unfortunate reality is like at these companies, without like lingering layoffs, let's say, like you get way too comfortable.
Yep.
And that comfortability is like very poisonous for a person like me. And I'm sure like a person like you, whoever, it's like, I can't, like, I'm not working at like my biggest capability. Mm-hmm. And I think like that sports analogy you made is the reason for that. Like, if you train in a room where you're the best guy, you're gonna get comfortable smashing all these people. And like essentially maybe there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe you just enjoy smashing all these people that are just lesser than you and whatever, and what like you move on. But like I always want to like improve. And the same kind of thing is like, I'm not the best engineer at my team. I'm not even close. But like I want to be pushed to a limit where I can get to that. And due to the comfortability, I'm not being pushed to be the best, and I'm not under that pressure. Like I said earlier, like I'm definitely under pressure of like being ramped up as a tech lead, and like that's been stressful. But like I know if I tell my team like, hey, like I'm too stressed, like I need like a mental day off, they're like, yeah, no problem, take it. We understand. And I kind of don't want that in a sense. Like I almost want more like, hey, no, like you fucked up. Like you need to like, we don't care, stay up late, fix it. I want that more of like a pressure cooker situation.
Yeah, it's funny because when you're, at least in the situation I'm in, you get that, but it's not from your coworkers, it's just from the market. There's like no bigger bully than the market that doesn't give a shit about you at all. Yeah. Like you're trying, it doesn't give a shit. Like what you're doing is not good, nobody cares. So like, yeah, like it just, that's the thing that's beating you up every single day. Just the world ignoring you, everything you're trying to do.
Dude, on content. So you and I talked about the DMs like, when we first started talking, and I told you like one of my goals with content creation.
Yeah.
And it's like that what you just said about how no one cares does not like it means so, it could not be more true.
Yeah.
When you make a video that you pour like so many hours in, like you're like, this topic is great, it's all this, I edited, it's like everything's perfect, right? But you put it out there and no one gives a shit. And like that's the reality of it, man. Like no one gives a shit about you. Content market, whatever, like they don't care. You have to just kind of put out a quality content all the time, and like that eats at you sometimes, because you get like I had a really good week on content like 2 weeks ago. All my stuff was popping off. I was like, yo, this is it. The exponential growth, it's happening. This week, like as fast it went up, as fast it went down.
Yeah.
And I have to like kind of swallow that realization again. It's like, okay, that was a blimp. I'm back to reality, like where the reality is like no one's gonna care that I just made some random video on Go if it's not like what they resonate with, right? I don't know how close that is to the market what you talked about.
It's the exact same thing. It's like you get it like when you're, I mean, I think it's the same job. Like when you found a company, you are nobody. You're trying to find some value you can create in the world that no one has tapped yet. And it's got to resonate with people. So content creation is the exact same thing. I think what sucks a little bit about content creation is for most people it's a very solo effort. When you found a company, especially with other co-founders, like having everyone, it's still stressful and hard, but like it feeling like a team effort is very different. It's like if you play a team sport versus like an individual sport, you know, I think content creation is the exact same thing. It's just you're kind of on your own in your own head.
That's the thing. I've always played individual sports, except like rugby. I played like high level rugby, like amateur rugby back in Canada. And that was like the only team sport. But before then, like I swam competitively solo, tennis solo, like wrestling, jiu-jitsu solo, right? Like you only blame yourself. And I think that's why like team sports, as much as I like team sports, for me, they're like very fun.
Yeah.
Because I can, maybe it's like a conscious thing, but I can always, you know, subconsciously like, oh, if we did bad, like that's not me. There's other people, like, you know, when it's team sports, when you get smashed in jits or wrestling, there's no one to blame.
Yeah.
There is nobody to blame. You got smashed because you got smashed. And I think like because of that way, because I grew up that way, like I'm just always like content, like I have to do it by myself. And like now, you know, I have an editor. He's great, you know. Obviously, I pay him, but he feels like a little bit more like he's more involved in my content, right? Like he wants to get paid. He's making sure he gets a good wage hourly and everything. But he's also like looking after my content, which I think is super important, extremely important. But yeah, like at the end of the day, dude, like it's all me, and it's like it eats at you sometimes. When you're not doing good, eats at you.
That's the same thing. Like when you're a founder, like your emotions are just tied to whatever metrics that you are trying to pull. Like there's a chart, and my like mental state just correlates 100% exactly to that.
It's like the Dunning-Kruger chart.
No. I meant like just a chart of our like downloads. Like that's the thing that we focus on.
Oh yeah. You literally meant like a metric chart.
No. Like just literally that's like a chart of my emotions. Like if you want to know how I'm doing, just go check our NPM downloads. And the thing you bring up, that's why it's the thing I say all the time is. The people that succeed doing this are the people that can just take that hit for a very long time because it compounds very, very, very slowly. So the longer you can stay in it, like that's just how you're gonna have success. Like I think it's been a bit tough, I think, for some people because in the last 5 years, there've just been so many crazy successful people really quickly, like seemingly successful people really quickly. So I think people kind of expect like, oh, doing any kind of like independent thing, whether you're a creator or founding a company, you expect to be like those people that like start something and raise like $100 million 8 months later, and then they get bought for like 500 million a year later. Like those are stories that we see all the time, but that was like a weird anomaly. Like a lot of it just did not make sense. Most of the people that have like built long lasting things have done it over 10 years, very slowly.
Dude, what you're saying now hits so hard because so I'm gonna bring it back to the content thing because like obviously, you know, like I'm super close like Theo and Prime and like all the like everyone, you know, we're all very close. And like when Theo started making YouTube, like he popped almost instantly, right? He just popped off. His content was good, people loved him, you know, etc. And it's so difficult because you see the success of Prime and Theo. And like they put out a video and it's like their worst video is like your like best video in terms of metric wise, right? And you're just like, you're there seeing them like not complain, but like, okay, how can I do better now? And you're like, man, if only I can even get to that level where you're like not happy about. And it's like being so close to these successful people is good and bad. It's mostly good because you can see what they're doing. You can learn from them. You know, it's a good way to like always look up, but it's bad for your like mental state because then you're like, fuck, why, what am I doing wrong? Why can I not mimic that success? And there's been instances where like another content creator and they make really good videos, like, but they pop off, like make like, you know, let's say 10 videos and they're already hitting metrics that you're not even close to hitting. And you're already on like video 100, let's say, right? And you're just like that always comparison is so toxic, but I feel it's like the hardest thing to not do.
Yeah, exactly. It's really hard. I think it's a little, at least as a founder, like one of the key things is like stop watching your competitors, like just stop looking at them, stop doing all that. Because at least when you're building a business, if you start to pay attention to your founders, you just start to mimic them for no reason. And especially, I mean, that it might be different in the content space, but when you're building a business, like that just guarantees that you're not going to succeed. Like you have to come up with a unique angle of attack. And it's, even if you're just looking at other companies, like I'm just going to like see what they're doing just to like get an idea of things, that like poisons your head. It kind of biases you. So you have to like really be able to handle that stuff well. And it's super hard to think clearly of like what path makes sense for me, because it probably is going to be extremely unique and very different. I think it has to be. But yeah, like different companies go at different speeds. And the other thing, some of the stuff is like very invisible, right? So me and Liz were talking, because I interviewed the founder of Linear a couple months ago. And it was funny because I was asking him like kind of the early stages of the company. And I was like, oh, like I was asking about like the standard challenges you have when you're a startup. And he was just like, I don't know. We didn't really have that. Like we built the product, everyone loved it. We raised a shit ton of money and like now we're super successful and everyone loves us. They just had this like beautiful shot to the top. And Liz was listening and she was like, oh, fuck him. Like you're just like, that sucks. Yep. But then the thing that's invisible is that was like the third or fourth company by the three founders who are each individually extremely talented and have like 20 plus year career history. And this is like what that's culminated in, like that coming together. So like there's just a lot that can be very invisible. Like you talk about Prime, right? You know, he's like been doing this. By this, I mean, he's been like working on his career for a very long time. That's built up a lot. And that overnight success is a result of all that time that he put in before.
Yeah, 100%. So the invisible line's actually a really good like reminder that like, you know, there isn't truly like a overnight success. There is maybe like in terms of like the company, but like behind the scenes.
It happens occasionally. And like truly some people just truly have an overnight success and that happens, but that's like not in your control.
Yeah. Post Malone is like the best example of literally overnight success. Like drop the song on SoundCloud. Next thing he knows, like Wiz Khalifa, everyone is just retweeting it and bang, that's it.
Do you think that it was overnight? So we have a friend that he worked for some like German music startup, and there's a story where he was like, because he would like see the users and whatever, and he was like sending his friends like a photo. He was like, dude, look how crazy this guy looks, and he was just saying people the photo like, what a weird dude. And that ended up being Post Malone.
No way.
It was before he was famous, just like, you know, like happened like a year later. So I'm sure he was like grinding too, you know, like it says, worked so hard he forgot how to vacation.
Yeah. The story I heard, and the story that he comes tells, and I don't know if this is true or not, but like he was kind of, you know, not happy going the same like school path. One of his friends was making it big on streaming Minecraft. They moved to LA, and because he was just so like Post was so unhappy doing, you know, the regular like find a job, etc., he was like always into music. He just like tagged along with his friend in LA. He was like bumming, basically like a couch bum. And yeah, he just like recorded a song, which was White Iverson. Because if you really look at Post Malone's like SoundCloud, he had maybe like like less than 5 songs guaranteed before White Iverson, right? And those were not like at a high level studio. They were at a studio, but it was more like, like a basement level studio where there's some nice equipment here and there. And he recorded White Iverson and literally posted on SoundCloud with the art. And I'm sure there was a lot of invisible lines, like of grinding it. He made the art himself, but like the
ratio
effort to succeed, the ratio was like absurd. Yeah, because Post on SoundCloud somehow it gets to the hands of Wiz Khalifa. Like in my opinion, you've won. Yeah. If Wiz Khalifa's tweeting, and Mac Miller, all like you are getting hit up by people that want to do business with you after that.
Yeah. No, of course. Yeah. So there are cases like that where it's just like, you know, they just hit it. But again, just like how do you can't like recreate that, right? There's like no way for you to do that. All you can do is keep trying and hope that one of your things hits in that same way. Yeah. But yeah, like when you see those stories, it's just like, God damn it. But it's the same as literally someone winning the lottery. Like that's no different than whoever won like $500 million last month.
Yep.
But yeah, that comparison, it's tough. It grinds at you, especially when things aren't going well.
Yeah, exactly. So it's always like the mental state of things in terms of like founding or content creating. You have to always be like a step away from your emotions. And what I mean by that is you cannot this is gonna sound bad, and I hope you can correct me, but you can't celebrate the wins. In a sense, like you can't celebrate if you're gonna post a video and it gets 100,000 views while your average is like 1,000. Like you shouldn't celebrate that, because then you set up yourself for pretty much success. Because if your next video gets 1,000, you'll be like, oh my god, what just happened? And then you're panicking, you're frantic, and you're just forgetting that like that was the anomaly. That one video hit the lottery in terms of like in relation to other videos, but all the other videos are still like on that lower level.
Yeah, exactly. It's I mean, it's funny because I've heard you guys talk about this stuff, and like I've experienced it to a small degree, and I'm like, yeah, that is a real thing. Like you just obsess over the fact that your next one is going to be worse than your previous one. Like that just just happens all the time. I think that is a little bit unique with doing stuff in like I guess a more creative space. Like every product I've ever built has been better than the previous one because I've gotten better. And so I don't have to worry about that. Like there's other factors that determine whether it's going to be successful or not, but yeah, with content, it's like, it's so simple. It's like, there's like a number and this video was worse, even though you thought you knew what you were doing and you thought you got better.
It's like the only advice I'll give to anyone who's listening, who can like, who relates to this. And like, I'm still learning. I don't have the answers to kind of like circle back, I guess. It's like there's a content creator who I saw at the beginning of the year, like in January, said they will post a video every single week, once a week. That was their goal, right? And they did it very strong for the first 4 weeks. They did like the first 4 weeks of January, there was a video every single week. Every video flopped and then they stopped because it was too much. And I don't blame them. I understand. It's like, you know, you set this goal, you set yourself up for success, you do it 4 times, and it's just like, what the hell? My biggest advice to anyone is if you are setting yourself a goal, and I think a goal of releasing 1 video a week or setting yourself to that is a very, very good goal, right? And a lot of people may disagree, but I truly think if you stick with it and if you actually put the conscious effort to improve the video every week by one small factor. And that's what Mr. Beast said. Like, look at your previous video release on week 0, and then week 1, find one thing to improve on. Maybe your audio was shit. Maybe your lighting was shit. Maybe your editing was choppy. Maybe your font was hard to read.
Yeah.
Pick one of those things and improve in the next video, and do that for a whole year. And that's what I actually did. Like starting March, when I started like YouTubing, I was like, I'm gonna do 1 video a week. Okay.
Yeah.
And I did that, and I haven't stopped doing that this whole year. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna like push it. So I did 2 videos a week, and like that like step is so hard. But even when shit's like low, even like my last like 10 videos have been flops, I'm just like, okay, making sure I end this year uploading 2 videos a week and making sure I'm improving every video by one small factor. And at the end of the year, that's when I will take some time to really like reflect on all the videos I posted, on like, did I hit the goal? Did I not? Was I happy? Was I not? But that's the only time I actually give myself an opportunity to reevaluate that goal I set for myself in the beginning. But I want to make sure I don't quit that goal.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think the thing that brings me a good amount of comfort is the way I look at things is whether I'm not like in a binary sense successful or not is fully up to me. Like if you laid out that plan, it's up to me whether I follow through with that. It's up to me whether I put in the energy to improve every single week. If I do that, I will be successful. Whether I'm like Mr. Beast level successful or like, something lower, that's not really up to me. That's like, I think of that more like, that's like fate. That's like things in the world, things kind of out of my control. And I like looking at it that way because I think it's realistic in that like, I know there's some things out of my control, but it also doesn't give me any excuses. Like the binary fact of whether you get to a place that you're happy with your life and what you've done is in your control. But like, you don't have to like be looking at the biggest people thinking like, how do I get there?
What's your opinion on people that quit? So like that person, like an example, a person who sets that goal like 1 video a week and they quit like after a month. What's like your take on those individuals?
Yeah, it's funny because like when you see someone set that goal and they do it, you perceive them in one way, and when you see them set it up and then they don't do it, you like see them in a completely different way. So when someone doesn't do it, to me, it feels like they weren't really thinking too hard about why they were doing things. And they maybe just picked like something that they thought they were supposed to be doing. And they like set it up and they got distracted. The person that succeeded did the exact same thing. Like, but it just seems to me, it just weirdly seems like the other person thought about it more and like set that goal with a lot more intention. I think I often see people like kind of flail when they like set these goals where they don't really know what they're doing. They don't really know why they want to do things. They're just like, okay, if I want to do something and that means I need a goal, and they just kind of pick something random. Yeah. What about you?
I agree. I think goal setting is like super important. Like goal setting isn't just something that you see some person you look up to and just like, okay, I'm gonna do what they just said, because how can, like, that's a recipe, like that's the secret, right? Like a goal is very personal, and a goal is like very like, what is your current situation? And you have to set goals that set yourself up for success, and not goals that will set you up for failure. And I think a lot of people don't actually realize that at all. Like no one puts effort into the goals they set. Like if we take it away from even content or founding, like going to the gym, right?
Yeah.
Like the goal is, let's say you're just overweight or whatever. You're like, you just need to go into the gym, right? And you're like, okay, I'm going to go starting January. I'm going to go 3 times a week, and that's it. And it's like, well, that's on paper a great goal, but did you actually see like, what are you going to do at the gym?
Yeah.
Did you actually set up a plan? Like, do you know what you're going to do? Like, you can't just go to the gym on day 1 and be like, okay, now what? Like, there's going to be machines there that you've never seen before. There's gonna be free weights everywhere. There's gonna be people doing exercise that you've never seen before. Like you literally can't take it lightly. Like for me, every time I go to a gym, I literally always go and I always take that free trial. I go, and before I even set the goal, I check the whole, like I lay out the entire gym. Like I want to know everything about it. I want to know where all the equipment is. I want to know if there's like, amenities like a pool, a sauna, whatever, just so then I can set my goal. But and then it's more realistic. Then it's like, okay, on like, day 1, 2, it's gonna be upper and lower body split, and then third day it's just be like swimming, right? Like cardio. Yeah. And then it's like more realistic, and you're setting yourself up for a bit more success, as opposed to a person just showing up to a random like LA Fitness and just be like, I don't know what exercise to do, I've never been here. It's like, well, no shit, like,
yeah,
how are you gonna, what were you expecting?
Yeah, the intentionality is big, and this concept of like, I heard like the phrase cargo culting, where everyone just kind of copies something that looks like the thing that leads to success, but they don't really understand why it works. That phrase originates from something that seems really ridiculous, but it's actually happens all the time. So I think it was during some war. I forgot, it was some war where the military was like doing was dropping supplies on some like island where there were like remote tribes that were there that like didn't really contact like the rest of civilization. They would see that the cargo drops would come in. So they started doing these weird rituals where they would like kind of act like the people on the ground, like calling in the airplane and doing like the airstrip type of things. They would like do the same things. And in their head, they were like, if I do this, that means a cargo drop will show up with a bunch of supplies. So it obviously makes no rational sense. Like that's not why the plane is coming, but they just picked this random behavior and they're like, that's what it is. And you see this all the time everywhere. And I think, going back to linear people, like, because they've been just getting a lot of coverage just because of their new fundraise. They talk a lot about like the way they do things. I really like them because the way they do things is exactly the way that I want to do things. Like I really like, we have like a lot of synergy with the way they want to build companies. So everyone looks at that list of things they do and they're like, okay, I just need to check a box and do all of those things, and that means I'm going to be successful. But the thing they miss is those people didn't do those things and then they were successful. They found a way to be successful so that they could operate in the way that they want. Like this is the way they wanted to build a company, so they found a way to do it so they could. It's like actually exactly in reverse. And you just see that everywhere. There's like a lot of box checking of like the thing we were saying, like, okay, I need to go to the gym 3 days a week. I'm checking the box, going to the gym 3 days a week. Like, but no, they need to be way more intentional about that. Like, who are you? Like, what clicks for you? Like, what type of workouts click for you? Like, what can you actually stick with for years? Nothing is easy. Like nothing is easy just like checking a box. And there's no like generic solutions that work like that for everyone. Yeah, you just see that all the time. Yeah.
No free lunch. I don't know how much this relates, but I saw this really cool analogy once where it's like the behavior society, and it made me think about the cargo and like the story you just said. And I don't know how much this relates to it, to be honest, but I just wanted to bring it out. It's like scientists did an experiment where like they had monkeys in like a room or whatever, and there was a ladder and it's like a light bulb on top or like a button, a red buzzer. And like if the monkey were to climb up and touch the red buzzer, they would get like a little electrical shock. Yeah. Right? And so every time the monkey would be like, that's bad. And so the monkeys would realize every time he touches this, I'll get shocked. That's pain. I don't like it. They won't do it. And this experiment lasted so long. And there was like generations of these monkeys that lived in this like controlled environment, right? And so the next generation of monkeys we born, the ones after that we born, and even like the latest generation of monkeys that were born knew not to touch the light bulb because their older generations never did so. But they themselves never actually touched the light bulb. They didn't know the impact, right? But because society constructed this, like their society, I should say, constructed this environment where they knew, don't touch the light bulb, they were just like, okay, I just know not to do that, right? Without actually experiencing the consequence. So I guess what like it's like the behavior of society to follow a pattern without necessarily understanding why that's happening.
Yeah, and it's like when you, that's exactly it. It's exactly the same thing. It's like, it's actually shocking how much stuff that people put time into that just has no value, or like doesn't make sense at all. Like I like went through this myself when because as I'm working at SST, I'm like, okay, I like have been programming for years. Like I'm not like super worried about that, but like marketing and like getting stuff out there, I gotta like learn that, and I gotta get better at that. And initially we were just doing what everybody else was doing. When you release a feature, you like do some shitty screencasts of you using the feature, and then you make like some shitty little blog posts that nobody sees. And every single dev tool company does the exact same thing for every single time they do a release. And nobody stops to think like, why are we doing this? Like, does this actually get us anything? No, it doesn't. Like, those things can only ever get like 100 views, right?
Exactly.
If you actually want to do marketing, you have to come up with something that can get, it's not guaranteed, but at least has a potential of getting like, tens of thousands of views.
Yep.
And if you actually think about that, you would not be doing anything that any of these companies are doing. Like I tweeted yesterday about case studies of being like, a lot of these really early stage companies do these like big long case studies, and to me when I see that, I'm just like, well, they did that because they have one customer. They have the time to do this big case study. Like 9 people are going to read that, and that's like what they bucket under the marketing. Like, okay, we did marketing, check the box. But yeah, you just see that everywhere, and it's crazy how much just doesn't make any sense at all.
A company, and I know you're a fan of them, that I think beyond the actual experience in the tech they created, that do marketing super, super well is Drizzle.
Oh yeah.
Because Drizzle, the way they do their marketing is so counterintuitive, and it works. And you can't disagree that it doesn't work. Like they almost like Andrew, like on his personal account, would post memes essentially bashing Drizzle, like making fun of Drizzle. And if you didn't know Andrew's like one of the main people at Drizzle, you'd be like, oh, like what the hell? Like Drizzle must suck then. Yeah. But no, like it's like this counter like curiosity thing that they did, and it's just working so well. And even their main Drizzle account on Twitter, it's like they post memes, and they know that memes on tech Twitter are like a hot thing.
Yeah.
And that's what gets people to click. So it was super interesting to see how that team over there handled their marketing. And that's not even talking about how great of a tool it is itself, right? That speaks for itself. But no matter how good the tool is, if you don't have good marketing, no one's gonna use it, right?
Yeah. It's this they're excellent. I would probably put them as like number one of people that I think it's funny because they're so small, and they don't, like, you would never think of them this way, but even companies that raise like $100 million, like, do not get anywhere close to being as good as what these, like, 3 people are doing on the marketing side. So again, that's what I was saying earlier. It's leverage, right? They found a way. Just they're 3 people, but they're like out marketing these giant companies. They found a way to build this crazy lever.
They don't have those guardrails, right? They don't have that red button not to touch.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you pitched any of what they did and had to go through like the meetings and all of that, like it just would not happen.
Exactly.
But yeah, like it's crazy to me that people just don't think, and like it's not that crazy because I remember myself, I used to like just not really think, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing marketing, but not realizing I wasn't. Yeah, it's once you're on the other side, you just feel like, wow, how could I have been so naive and stupid?
Yeah.
The other thing that I find interesting is before you're actually in, to use the quote, before you're actually in the arena, you have all these like intellectual thoughts on like this idealized version of how things are. You're like, well, if I'm going to make content and it's going to be so good and it's going to be so like good content that like I don't have to do all these other things. Then you get thrown in the arena, and guess what? Nobody gives a shit of like whatever like weird philosophy you have, and you just get to the point where you're like, yeah, I'll fucking take my shirt off and dance, like whatever the audience wants, like that. Like I just gotta do the stuff that works. Like when you're actually in that position, all of your like weird notions of how you think things are supposed to work just go out the door.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like Prime, he DM'd me saying like, yo, he's like recently getting into Go, like not even that recent, but like he's been getting into Go heavily, and he even sees like the benefits from the content wise. He's like, yeah, when I post a video on like other languages, they don't do as well as like Go content. And he's like, that's why he like tripled down on Go. He's like, I can see that like, he likes the language, whatever. from a practical perspective, but also from the perspective of just like from content, which is one of his priorities. He sees it's resonating with his audience.
Yeah, find those little opportunities. You just start to fall in love with whatever is working, like whatever there is an opportunity for. I think so. People like, I think what's great about being a software engineer is you can work in like any industry. Like you can be doing, I don't know, like you can be working in the finance industry for a while and like overnight switch to like a completely different place. And people have always asked like, oh, like, but like, don't you want to find a field you're really interested in? I'm like, well, my experience has been any place I've been in, I've just gotten really interested in whatever they're doing because there was an opportunity there to do something. So, and that's what's awesome about being a software engineer. You get the exposure to all these different places and you can literally be part of anything that's happening. Kind of very untrue for other fields where you have to like kind of really dedicate yourself to one dimension.
Yeah, exactly.
We're at an hour. You got anything else?
I got nothing else. This is like a loaded conversation.
Yeah, I'm glad you suggested this. Good to have you back on.
We should do these more often. I love opportunities to speak to you. I was going to talk about CDK, but I was like, no, this is way more interesting than CDK. So
yeah, it's funny because we this is actually a great example of what we were just talking about. So initially when me and Adam started doing this, we were like, okay, this is like a tech podcast. We need to talk about tech stuff. Like we had these notions of like what this had to be. And then we just kind of like ran out about tech stuff to talk about because like there's not like new interesting stuff happening every week. There was for like a little while, but then there wasn't. So we just started talking about other stuff and it started doing way better. So, you know, there's this idea what we had of what this thing was supposed to be. Turns out like we were wrong. Like when you're actually in there experimenting, you learn that something else actually is better.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.